Apple II forever, making life better and better. Apple II forever and ever, bringing the rainbow to you.
Well, hello, this is Petar Puskarich, and I am going to be talking a little bit about Fujinet and using it on your Apple IIc, and as well as your 2GS, 2E, basically anything that has a smart port um, device card that you can hook the Fujinet to. Um, Again, this is for the Fujinet session for KansasFest 2024. I guess I can basically just start right out and figure out, okay, so what is a Fujinet device, and what is it, what does it look like? And I've got a few here that I can show, and this is one of the very first ones for the Apple II, and it's the revision 0. And this was one that we did about 2 years ago now, 2022, on June 30th. It was released. And it mostly worked at the time. It can actually be reprogrammed now for the current firmware, which is really good. Shortly after that, so July 13th of the same year, there was another one released. That was the Rev 00, and the focus for this little web camera is really horrible, so I apologize for that. So then about a year after those two devices, we ended up with the first revision 1, which has a nice little case now. And the current revision 1 currently is on the Apple IIc I have on the desk that I'll be showing the screen for here shortly. I only have the two web cameras for this particular session, and it's a little hard to move them around and getting them situated easily. But you can see the screen over there, or at least the keyboard for the 2C, and then the 2C Plus is the one that's a little bit above it. We'll probably use that in a little bit as well. But yeah, so basically the project started back there in 2022, at least for the Apple II side. And what the Fujinet will do is give you a multi-function device that hooks to your smart port. And at least on the Apple IIc, the smart port is built right into all of them, except I believe it's the firmware 255 model. The ROM 0 works, and the other firmware works. In the one I'm using today is a ROM 0, but I also do have the ROM 4X and the ROM 5X for the 2C Plus that I use as well, and Fujinet works great with those. And you can do things with the other firmware that allow you to, say, boot off of the Fujinet directly as the first drive it boots to instead of the internal. You can do some neat things like that. And on the 2C Plus, you can also set the speed by default to be the slow or fast, whichever one you want. And that's a neat feature to have. Let's see, as far as the device itself and what it presents, and I'm going to cover a lot of these through the software I'm going to show here in a little bit. It's going to basically give you a device that can function as a SD card image loader, but it has a huge amount of networking ability and Wi-Fi as well. So instead of just using your SD card to load images, you can also load them off of Wi-Fi endpoints via a server you can run or hit anybody else's servers that are exposed to the internet over what's called TNFS. And that's a protocol that's being further developed, and recently it was just added the ability to do it over TCP/IP instead of just UDP. It also has the ability now, I believe, that they've added, I think, some form of FTP. um, as well as possibly SMB services to it as well. I have not played with that yet. I need to do that. Um, so that's where you can, those methods, allow you to remotely load images and use them remotely, both read and write, depending on the privileges that you have on those images. If you're using the SD card, then it's kind of like having a floppy EMU, and then you can just boot things locally. Another neat trick that you can do with Fujinet as well is you can copy images from someone else's server down to your Fujinet as well. So then you can have a local copy. That was a nice feature that was recently added a few months ago. But in addition to that, what else can it do? Well, we now have a ProDOS clock. So yes, you can have a clock on your Apple IIc, and all you need is the Fujinet device hooked to the back of it. Pretty easy, and it works. Um, let's see, the driver was added, we added it to ProDOS, and 242, 243 works just fine. There's also, let's see, the ability to run CPM as well on your Apple IIc or IIc Plus or whatever. So if you have some old app, some old CPM apps you want to run, you can do that pretty easily. You don't necessarily need the ZRAM Ultra in your IIc to actually run those now. There's some other features that I'll get to in the software side of this, which will then be looking at HTML and JSON network protocol adapters. And there's also the ability to do direct SSH now, as well as Telnet connections, and we'll do a couple of those. There's some examples we can do for the weather and the International Space Station tracking. There's all sorts of neat fun things that we're going to cover. Buried in the Fujinet device itself as well is the ability to have a integrated, basically modem over Wi-Fi, as well as a virtual printer. The virtual printer is implemented sort of like an internal, I guess, say the new print device, where you basically you print and then you pull off your PDF from the web interface that the Fujinet has as well that you can get to separately. Unfortunately, you have to do some custom ROMs right now to do that redirect, and it's kind of slow and maybe a little buggy at the moment. I do have a couple ideas of possibly how to fix that, but we probably will be having to add some serial interfacing externally to the Fujinet in order to interface directly to the serial ports on the back. It's just an idea. I came across it last week, and I think it may work if we have enough pins, but I don't know yet. So with that, let me start by showing you some of the software that will run on the device, and I am using a ROM, I guess ROM version with device 1 with the latest firmware on it. And with that, let me switch over to the great blue screen. All right, so hopefully you can still hear me in the video. And what we're going to do is I'm going to fire up the IIc. All right, so it'll do the standard boot cycle, and then it'll drop into um, basically smart port PR number 5, whatever's running there. So Fujinet will come up automatically if there's no disk in the floppy drive. When you first get a Fujinet, you have to configure it for your Wi-Fi adapter. And yeah, these are all internal addresses, so you're not gonna get to me anyway, but that's a whole nother story. So you can basically set up your Wi-Fi endpoints, and let's go ahead and do that. And we'll say change the SID, and then it'll scan for your networks, and it'll find what you have available. So let's go. We'll do my normal one, and then you can enter in your security key, and it's uppercase and lowercase. And if you get it right, it'll join your network. So right now, the Fujinet device basically knows how to talk to your Wi-Fi and can get out to the internet. So here's where I was saying that you could connect over your SD card. So let's do that first. So here's SD card. And when I was talking before about the CPM, if you have the full CPM folder, you can have basically access to a full library of CPM apps. And we'll get to that after bit 2. So let's just go through. I'm going to show you the clock first, I think. So in that case, this particular image is actually corrupted. So we'll go down to images and get the other one. So here's A2 desktop 1.4. And then basically when you select it, then you get to decide if it's readable, read only, or read write. I'm going to choose write by hitting W. And the interface is kind of interesting like that, where once you make the selection, it drops you back at where you are. But if you want to go back out, you hit escape. And then you'll see down here, so slot 1 is for slot 1 through 4 are for your smart port, say devices and or drives that you mount or images that you put in there. So in this case, we have the A2 desktop image mounted to it. Nothing else is there. The ones down in the bottom, so this would be positions 1 and 2, are for the disk 2 emulated drives. So the first 4 are for SmartPort block devices. The next 2 down are going to be for your actual disk 2 style images that you can mount. They are read only at this particular point in time, but you can actually load WAS images. I believe it's .do images, and that's what kind of goes in there. And that's kind of how it makes the distinction between whether it's running as a disk 2, and it'll actually present it electrically on the bus on the 2C as a floppy drive. So it would look like an external Apple IIc floppy drive. All right. So right now that's empty. That's fine. We'll hit escape, and that's where it's going to boot. So now I say it's going to boot. It'll hit the floppy drive that's empty, and then start to boot up. So now it's loading A2 desktop, and at that little blip at the beginning, actually saw the Fujinet clock driver. And as you can see, it is pulling up the correct time. And yes, I am recording this at 4:13 in the morning, Central Time. But I just want to say that is, it is the clock. And since we're using the driver in A2 desktop, you can't set it because it's pulling it off of the Fujinet. So it's a ProDOS clock in action, and it just works. And that's on basically an otherwise bone stock Apple IIc ROM 0. So basically, this one's loading the entire image up, and it was loaded off the SD card. So let's go over here to look at. I want to show the screensavers because it's just kind of fun, and it shows how fast things load off the SD card as well. So the speed is actually pretty decent. That's enough of that. And I do have a regular Apple mouse connected to this Apple IIc. We'll close back out of this. And then here we can do this. We can say about this Apple II. And then it'll say that it's ROM 0. We're in ProDOS 2.4, 128K of RAM, 65 CO2. And then here down on slot 5 is where it identifies basically all of the Fujinet devices that it knows about, because it's just enumerating the SmartPort devices. And it still knows that there's a disk 2 there. So that's pretty neat. Okay, so yeah, you can launch images off the SD card. So what else can you do? All right, so what I want to do here next is there are two buttons on the Rev1 Fujinet, and in order to reset them, so we want to get back, say we want to get back out of the A2 desktop. Basically, you can, let's see, make sure this is right. It's this one. You hit the reset button there, and that basically resets the config and all the devices within the smart port enumeration. So the configuration disk comes back. So I'm going to push that button now, and then basically do a control open Apple reset. Well, most of the time it works. All right, so switch back. You'll see this reboot screen. All right, so we'll get back and we'll reconfigure it. And the Fujinet will store the last settings that you had for it. So down here, you can see in drive position 1, the A2 desktop is still there. But we don't want to do that. So let's go do some other fun things. So let's hit the internet. Let's see what fdiller.org has on his server. So it's going out to the internet and hitting his TNFS server. And let's go to the Apple folder. Oh, okay. Let's see what we got. Let's take a look at some of these Fujinet lib apps. And these Fujinet lib apps are the applications that use the Fujinet data handlers and what they call the end device. So you can actually do very newer and complicated things, like doing JSON parsing and HTML parsing. Um, let's see, let's go in. Yeah, we'll do this one. We'll do the ISS. And we'll do that as read only there. Come back out, boot. All right, it should drop in here any second. There it goes. So load the ISS, and this is the International Space Station tracker, and it is going out to a data source and pulling direct JSON via the Fujinet adapter, and then presenting it back to the basic application as a string of data that it can use to plot where the ISS currently is. In this case, it's in that upper right-hand corner. And then every 30 seconds to a minute, it'll make another request out to the network and pull in new coordinates and then remap where it's at. And it'll sit here and, you can do that basically all day. But it's one way where, it's pulling the live data, that longitude, and latitude, and it gives you the time when it was pulled. So that's a pretty cool one there too. So let me drop this off again. We'll come back in. Isn't that fun? Got to give it time for the old MT chips to drain. All right, so now we have our Fujinet back. And then again, let's go back out to his site. Apple, we'll do another Fujinet lib app. Okay, so International Space Station. How about some weather? So we'll do the enhanced one. And then we'll say read only on that one. Escape to let it boot. And this one's using a non-chargeable data source for the weather. And the API is being utilized in order to fetch local weather. So right now it's actually going out and fetching the data for, I believe it's Wiley, Texas, because that's the closest one it has in their system. And then as you can see, yes, it's pulled right up. In this particular app, you can do some changes in the units. We'll hit U for units, and it'll go back out and repool in Fahrenheit instead of Celsius. And then it'll update that as soon as it's done. So we'll give that a second to populate. There it is. Yes, it's basically 74 out, but because the humidity is 89% right now, it's feels like 81. So somewhat typical Texas day in the late summer. You can also see it also brings in the forecasts. So there's our current day today. So it looks like we're going to get some rain today, and then it'll finally clear up beginning of this coming week. And then you can keep going if you hit next. So we can see what's going on. So it's going to be okay. I'll hit back. All right, cool. Let's go back to the weather. There we go. That's kind of what it is. And you can even also go through and say, I want to change the location. So instead of Dallas, let's just say Boston. Let's see if I can find it. Sometimes it'll find them by name. So it's currently out pulling data at the moment for Boston. And there's a Boston, US is a MA. So pick the New York time zone, and yeah. And we're still in Fahrenheit. So yeah, it's 52.2 dew point, and it's 60 degrees out. So a little cooler than me and down here in Texas. But that's that. So we'll quit out of that, and there it is. This particular TV I've got has an issue with syncing sometimes to the color and non-color. Okay, so let's reset that back. And we'll control reset. And then I'll hit config system, and I'll pull us back in the Fujinet proper. All right. So let's go back. See what else he has in here. A lot of the latest development work has gone into these Fujinet lib apps. That's why I'm kind of going over them now. The clock part, I've already shown how to do it, but this PO for the Fujinet clock, yeah, we'll load it. It has basically the driver for it, I believe, is all that's on that one. We'll say read only. It might not even boot. We'll see. Oh, is it getting that? It doesn't like that from before. Yeah, so let me just reboot. With the way that the Fujinet, let's say uses and abuses the smart port protocol and the port itself, sometimes the machines do get a little cantankerous and you just have to reboot and start over. So yeah, so let's go back. Luckily, this is all fast, and you can, you don't have to have any floppy disk for this. You don't have to, anything at all. Everything's coming over the net. Okay, now let's go back down. We'll grab the clock PO. We'll make it readable. Let's make sure things are where we want them. Oh, there's the other thing. That was my fault. So there's what happens when you have a PO, which is ProDOS order, that's in our disk 2 mode drive, and you really don't want that. So I would hit E to eject that because we want to boot it off the smart port side for ProDOS mode. And then there we have a normal boot. Okay, and it should I think this particular disk loads the driver. Double check. All right, so there's a list that has everything there. CPM, and there's the unit number 6 is the actual clock. And here's where we can show you that, those first four slots are 0, 1, 2, 3 for ProDOS style blocks images, and you can use the large ones like the Total Replay. Almost forgot I forgot its name. And then that number 5 is where CPM lives, and then we have the network printer and then modem devices. So looks like continue. Let's see what this is doing. Okay, so in this case, yeah, it's just setting up the clock in the back end. So let's go back. Oops. And this is showing what happens when you pick a local server that is not online, and it'll eventually time out here in a second. Or it's just as fast to reboot. I promise we'll get to something fun here again. All right, back here. As we're pounding his server left and right. Okay, here we go, back in. Okay, so, okay, here, let's go back to this one. So we can go to the Catter, and basically this is a VT100 emulator that was now written in assembly language, and it was converted over from another application, but it's really fast and it works extremely well. And this is where I'm going to show you basically SSH and Telnet. All right, so put this up here again. This is going to be read only again. Okay, it's in the right spot. All right, so it's going to load it up. All right, so here we have this Catter, and you can do Telnet and SSHs. Unfortunately, it's going to be passwords in the clear and that kind of stuff. And when you do SSH, because you have to give them, so you'd have like user and password for SSH. So in this case, we can do SSH, and here's a throwaway one. Whoops. Do Control H for delete. We're gonna say, let's see if I can get this one. H pi colon Apple II. Let's say at 192.168.0.105. All right, so Pi Apple II is the standard for the A2 server instances. If you don't change them, whatever. And this is one of my local Apple Share NetAtalk boxes that I created. And then we'll go ahead and see if it connects. And looky there, it's like just boom fast. It's like you're not going at slow modem speeds, or even if you have like an Ethernet 2, it actually seems to be actually faster than what Ethernet 2 can do on a regular Apple IIe. So in this case, we see whatever we're on here. There's some of my old scripts and stuff. You can even do you can run standard console commands. It's essentially it's SSH into your server. So it actually updates pretty fast. I'll do quit. Let's say who am I? Then we can do so basically it's scrolling as fast as you would get it kind of off of Wi-Fi and direct. All right, so that's SSH. So let's exit from there, and then when you exit, it dumps you back. So we're gonna come back in the Catter system. But this time, let's go over to a BBS, and I'm gonna basically pick on Captain's Quarter 2 BBS again. So we're gonna basically telnet this time into the cqbbs.ddns.net on :6502 for the Apple II side. And let me go back. back there. So in this case, we can just do telnet : / and then we can come back in with the CQ bbs.ddns.net : 6502. And if it works, which it should, it'll connect to his BBS over telnet, unless someone's on and you can't get in. We'll see. All right. Well, maybe not this time. Now, I have noticed that sometimes the reconnects do not actually work on this right now, but I bet if we reboot, come back in, it's going to work. There we go. So it mounted the disk. All right. And when there's activity going on the device itself, the little red light for disk activity will be there. And if you have Wi-Fi access enabled and it's connected, the white light will be there. All right, so let's try this again. Telnet. I go CQBB, oops, QBBS.ddns. Make sure that's right. Yep, .net : 6502. And then that is usually a good sign when it goes black, and then there it is. So there's the captain's quarters BBS. And come in. We'll do this. And unfortunately, it is black and white, not color, but it is super fast for as far as going BBSs on an Apple IIc. And you can also notice that we're not getting any dropped lines or missing characters or anything either. So there we go. And it's like, it's just kind of amazing how well this works. So then you can, basically it's just, standard VT100, and you can configure anything you're connecting to do that. So then we scroll around, do whatever. And so let's look at system news, which is what we already did. Let's see. Here's what people downloaded and whatnot. And then basically you can say, we're done. Let's go out of here. Yes, we are out of here. So there was Telnet and SSH on an Apple IIc. All right. So that gets you the network device for doing transforms across JSON, HTML, and HTTP, whatever. Let's show the let's show the HTTP direct, and we can do that. Whoops. Go back. Here we go. We'll go down here to the Contiki browser that was rewritten to use the Fujinet as the protocol handler. It works for the most part that I've tried it for simple sites and things. So we'll give it another shot here. Oh, there we go. All right. Now load of the browser. So this is what was the normal, basically, Contiki browser that was recoded to use the network facilities offered by the Fujinet device instead of the native stack that Contiki runs with. So in this case, and there's also mouse support for this particular app as well. So let's go here. Let's go. Oh, let's see. Let's see if that even works. Well, we're getting it done on it, but no. All right, so let me try something else. Let's do. Okay, so we're receiving a page back after we made the request. Let's see if it actually comes back. Now look at this. It may not look pretty, but notice what it did. That was an HTTPS request going out for Google. So in the background for the browser, the SSL was handled properly by the actual Fujinet piece. So let's go down here and see if we can enter in the field, and then we'll say Apple IIc. So now we'll do a Google search, and hopefully it'll make the connection and give us something. It's thinking about it. Let's say the simpler the website, the better. All right, come on. So maybe it's not gonna do it this time. All right, so let's do a stop anyway. All right, get everything deleted off here. How about this one? Most of the time, this will give us the headers, and then you can slide down them on the page. But it's you can sort of browse on the web. Yeah, here's it's slowly building the page up in text. There's no graphics at all. And then it'll build the first page, and then it should be able to stop at the bottom. And then we can choose to go down and get more. Okay, mouse here. So let's go. Let's take a look at the iPhone. And they are highlighted like that because it will actually follow in through the links. But I just wanted to show that HTTPS side working. And a lot of these apps are going to be, completely, let's say, under development still, and they will get better. But it's still kind of cool. It is the Contiki browser, at least trying to get out to the web. All right, let's go here. Let's try this. If I spelled it right, it might actually make the connection. Okay. Well, it's not going to cooperate today. That's okay. We have other stuff to show. All right. Another reboot. And there we go. Let me see if there's anything else on his site I want to show. Let's see. If you are into Mastodon, there is a Mastodon client that you could use as well, and that's pretty entertaining. Let's go. How about here? Here's something that people like to see, at least for those of us that played with this for a while, because this is basically the new 5-card stud. And what's really cool about it is that it is one of the first multi-platform apps where you can, in this case, it's a 5-card stud poker. You can join a table and play against other people on the network, or play against the robots. Um, and there's a server in the back end that stores information. And the application for this program, whether it's on the Atari or the Atom or the Apple IIe, 2CGS, whatever, when you're playing on your with the Fujinet enablement, it will store which table you're playing, and it will also coordinate between the other apps who's playing. So right now there's no one online for good reasons here. So let's come in and we'll say, let's change. There we go. Find a table. And this one has the robots. So they're all going to basically make their bets and do what they want to do, whether they're going to call or bet or whatever. And then it's going to wait for me to do something. So I'm going to say, let's just raise 5. And then it'll continue going. And every time that it goes from person to person, it's going over to the server and pulling JSON information about the bet, about the person, where they're at, whatever, so it can actually be stored in the system. So we'll do another raise. So it's an actual live game, which is the really neat part about this, and it can be played across multiple different platforms of Fujinet. Okay, so I'm gonna basically kind of stop there, and we can basically close back to any kind of questions that you may have. I'll be online for this session, and we can go from there. All right, well, thank you very much, and hopefully I was able to show you a little bit about what Fujinet can do, especially using the Apple IIc. I'm going to highlight a few of the questions that came in as far as, let's say there was like a copy feature that we implemented back in April, May, that allows you, when it works, and it takes a long time usually to bring it in, but you can copy files from other people's TNFS servers down to your local SD cards, and then you can kind of build your collection, your local collection that way if you want. It works. Sometimes it looks like it's stalling out, but it's actually still working. You just have to give it a while. There are currently nightly builds going on at the moment that the combination with Jeff Pietmeyer and Thomas Cherryhubs and Moswald, we kind of figured out how to get the Masteries versions, all 3 versions, the A to B, and the B, to have availability of the current firmware now instead of having to wait for someone to custom compile it. It happens automatically now, and it's up on the nightly server, and that goes along for all the other devices as well in the Fujinet platform, whether it's Atom or Atari or the Apple side here. And then there are several more platforms on the way. Let's see. Yeah, anything else I didn't cover, I guess, in the Discord as we were running? It was fairly active. I'm gonna say, yeah, if you're interested in Fujinet at all, feel free to jump into the Discord server. As Steve mentioned, it is a very, let's say, active location, so it can be a little daunting for newer users, but feel free to jump in anyway. We help out as many people as we can, and many of us started from very little, including me on this project. So you can actually jump in and provide lots of help and move everybody forward. It's one of the few projects I've been involved with that actually is inclusive of pretty much everybody's talents if they want to actually do something. And then, yeah, and people that want to just use the devices, that's great there too, and they can get answers as well.
Thanks. And thanks for
Oh,
all
you're
your
welcome.
responses in the channel as well.
No problem. It was a great time. Thank you, guys.